Is this all a lie? What are the true numbers? And are these people correct for protesting, demanding the economy open up right now? Well, we're going to get into that plus a lot more in this video, looking at the data and also specifically what is happening internationally to answer that question, which most likely will surprise you. But before we do that, plus a lot more, this independent media organization survives mainly because of our affiliates now. Since, YouTube just fully demonetized us, took away our super chats and our memberships out of nowhere. So now we have started doing affiliate sales with health stores like this that we have personal relationships with. My friend actually runs this company. I trust him. I use his products. I like them. And I think you would too. And if you're interested in any of these products, check out the link down below. Now, obviously, we're dealing with an extraordinary situation that, of course, is filled with a lot of emotion rather than rational thinking. That's why I would ask you, before having a knee-jerk emotional reaction, to just look at the data, think about it, and then make up your own mind at the end of this. There's a lot of uncertainties surrounding our current situation, but one of the things that is becoming very clear is that the latest number of cases coming from this sickness coming in are very low. The projections have been very wrong. Previous projections showed close to 2 million people dying from this. The number now, according to some of them, is 60,000. Some projections are even lower than that. There's even a major drop in previous hotspots like Switzerland, Australia, Germany that now have more recoveries than active cases. Even Sweden, that didn't implement a lockdown, first saw, of course, an increase in the number of people who died from this, which was a lot higher than their neighboring country, Norway. But they, even now, are seeing a decrease in the number of cases in their country as well. And that's absolutely incredible news. And when you factor in the people affected by this sickness per million, the numbers and situation is definitely not as drastic as many people have made it out to be. Now, are we in the clear? Is this over? Can we reopen the economy? Was everyone just completely wrong? Well, we don't know that for sure, but let's keep looking at the information and data here, specifically with the test case of Ohio, whose new cases are even lower than the new minimum forecast and predictions. The original predictions were way off, and even new predictions are off as well, as the cases in Ohio have totally dwindled. Now we have to ask ourselves, how did Ohio dodge this bullet? Why are their numbers so much lower? Does this prove that this virus is fake, or this virus is not as strong as previously thought, or is this because of some of the measures implemented here? And those are all good relative questions to ask right now, but looking at the data, there are some important factors to consider, especially with Ohio shutting down schools, bars, and restaurants and issuing stay-at-home orders very early on, a lot earlier than their neighboring states. Their population is more spread out compared to other neighboring states like Michigan, a state that has more poverty, more cities, and also 4 times the number of cases with this sickness than Ohio. Does this prove that shutting down actually works? Well, also not clear, since of course we also have to factor in that Michigan tested more people than of course Ohio did. And with more testing, we have more cases, which brings us to a next very important point here that a lot of people should really consider is, how do you count cases? How do you count deaths from this? If someone dies in a car crash or say a skydiving accident, is that also ruled a death due to the sickness? In some states, yes. In some others, no. In some places, the numbers are overhyped. In some places, the numbers are underreported. Underreported specifically in Chile, that has been adding the people who died from it in the recovery category, because according to them, they are no longer contagious, but they're also dead. In New York City, they just decided to add an additional 3,700 people who, quote, probably died from this, with, again, no clear distinction if they did. And the classifying of people dying from this sickness has to be understood, because if we actually know the numbers here, if we actually know the mortality rate, if we know if it's in 1 in 300 or 1 in 3,000, that makes a very big difference in how we should approach this. And yet we still don't know because, again, there is no universal way to track whether someone died because of this sickness or died with it because of a pre-existing condition that was made worse by it. And different cities, different states, different countries report on these numbers differently, except for China. China just stopped reporting. They said that we're going to get to China in just a little bit here. I got a lot to say about them. But to me, unless we figure out the exact data here of how many people are getting this, how many people are actually dying from this, then we could know the proportionate response of how to address this situation. And until we figure that out, we're still in no man's land. We don't know if we're dealing with something that is just like the flu, or even weaker, or something even less significant, or if we're dealing with something a lot more serious. But there is some data to really consider here, and I do believe it's worth mentioning that in the United Kingdom, we are getting reports that they are experiencing 6,000 more deaths than they usually do through their 5-year average, meaning 6,000 more people die than they usually do every year. And this is with people not working, with people staying home, not driving, the number of accidents going down dramatically, injuries and deaths related to work or transportation down dramatically, which is all worth considering here, looking at all the data and numbers, since this is a factor here that we need to look into. I've heard some people say that the death rates have actually stayed the same, but again, we still have to consider the actual data of what we're seeing and relating that to the crazy situation that we're all in right now. I saw some other people talk about how these deaths are being counted as just pneumonia deaths, and somehow that this virus doesn't exist and it's all pneumonia, and specifically looking at graphs where the number of pneumonia cases are down this time of year for this specific year. But again, they don't factor in how the reporting of pneumonia cases has a lag every other year. When you look at all the reporting from 2010, 2012, 2013, 2015, 2016, the charts look almost the same as they do this year. And until we actually find out how many people are actually dying from this, until we actually have some legitimate data, it's going to be very hard to make a decision on what to do next. There's other people that do have very interesting theories that are also worth considering, that has been recently presented by some scientists who are claiming that a lot more people have this sickness and don't even know it and are not showing any symptoms of it. And after conducting their studies, these new estimates highlight that there are potentially 10 times more sickness cases that are being reported in California, meaning that a lot of people have this, aren't affected by it, and that the death rate is not as severe as many people say it is. The data even suggests that 50% of New Yorkers have already had this sickness and haven't been showing any symptoms. This, of course, would mean that the population would be closer to herd immunity and that the threat of this sickness isn't as severe. But yet again, this is still a theory that hasn't been founded because, again, testing has been very limited. And testing has been pretty key for countries like South Korea that have been absolutely beating this sickness and didn't even have to shut down their economy. They didn't lock down. They followed pandemic procedures. They tested effectively. And their country isn't in such a mess as, of course, ours is. But the United States has definitely not done well with testing, especially if you compare them to South Korea. There's also been a lot of problems with the testing false positives in certain countries, especially in the United States. And when you look at the situation from how it was handled by South Korea, that was able to avoid a lot of the bigger economic calamities, a lot of the other upheavals of societal life, we should see something that has been done and treated effectively. Now, another interesting thing to really look into and consider is, of course, China's response and how they're dealing with this entire situation now, especially after declaring victory over this sickness and reopening their entire country, even the epicenter Wuhan that is up and running again, with even the wet markets, which according to the Chinese official story, this entire sickness came from, even the wet markets are being opened up again. Now, China definitely hasn't told the world the truth about this from the very beginning. Have they succeeded? Did they win? Well, I would be a little bit skeptical of that, especially with new information coming in that some parts of China are going back into implementing more restrictive measures, since of course many fear that this sickness could potentially come back. There's also this footage showing very long lines outside of a hospital in its northernmost province, but we have to also understand many hospitals, especially here in the United States, have been officially locked down. A lot of elective surgeries and procedures that weren't urgent were stopped and postponed, and now the rush will happen as, of course, the hospitals will be a month behind on work that they usually do. Is this the reason why there's so many people outside of this hospital in China? Well, again, we still don't know. It's very difficult to verify a lot of information coming from China because of the firewall. But one thing is sure is that they're very cautious in their response. And even though they talk about how they officially defeated this virus, they are still very cautious in their approach in doing so. And we also have to remember that the United States and China are at odds with each other. China is a new emerging world power that is threatening U.S. hegemony. This is creating the perfect Thucydides trap. And we have to understand with China, all options here are on the table. Also, when we look at situations developing in Singapore, we are also seeing a new increase of number as they have also been releasing some of their restrictions. And this is also a little bit surprising since, of course, they've been dealing with this sickness also in a very effective way. That's why it's interesting seeing these upticks of cases, which, again, zero were imported, but developed with people who had work permits and were residing in dormitories. So should we open? Should we not open? Until we exactly know what we're dealing with here, I don't know. I can't tell you. There's been a fine balancing act that some people say we need to play between opening the economy and, of course, taking care of the sick. It's a very difficult decision to really come to a direct conclusion of, because it definitely seems either way there's going to be a lot of pain and suffering as a result of that decision. I wouldn't want to be Donald Trump right now. I wouldn't want to be a governor of any state right now because, again, a lot of the information is unclear. And again, even here as an independent news reporter, there's some people just going, very radically to one side of this argument. And to me, unless we know for 100%, unless we get to see all the data, I think that's a little bit premature and may actually even significantly hurt people. And particularly when it comes to my reporting, unless I know something is 100%, I'm not going to tell you that it's the bigger truth here because, again, we don't know here, and so doesn't a lot of other people. And the people who tell you they do, they're full of crap, and their actions might hurt you or your loved ones, which I don't want on my conscience. I already know a couple friends that have gotten this sickness, friends that still have shortness of breath, people who went through hell because of this, and I wouldn't want to wish it on to anyone else. Of course, seeing the damage that this does to people's organs, seeing sometimes even healthy people without any pre-existing conditions be devastated by this, I still rather urge on being cautious rather than being sorry. That's one side of the story. The second side is that the economic calamities because of this lockdown might actually kill way more people than this sickness, and that in itself is another major tragedy. And a third aspect of this that people need to understand is that totalitarian governments gaining power from this is also extremely dangerous, especially if you understand history and how much it is filled with tyrannical governments killing other citizens. And when you factor in all of those three scenarios, tyrannical government, economic problems, this sickness, you have a scenario that it's not an easy one to deal with, to say the least. We need more data. We need more information. That's why I cheer on information like this. And I think we need as much data as possible right now to come down to the right conclusion. China, of course, is hiding a lot of its samples. and not cooperating with, of course, the United States and other countries to trying to understand this unique situation that we're all in. And even though what I'm saying to you right now might not be easy to hear, it might not be something that you want to hear, I still do believe it needs to be heard. And if you believe that, share this video with your friends and family members, because if you don't, no one else will. For me, the situation that we're in is very unknown. Already, there's major delays with livestock like chickens, with seed companies. Again, this is why for a few weeks now I've been telling you to grow your own food. I still recommend that. I still recommend you respect the space of others, specifically elders. That's why I think it's a good idea to wear a mask. I thought that idea was good even before this entire crazy situation unfolded, especially after looking at the data in Hong Kong, where they were able to almost completely beat out influenza because of this simple, courteous act to your fellow human being. And I think right now we need more courtesy than anything else. We definitely don't need more government. We don't need more laws. What we need to do is to get to the bottom of exactly what is happening. We need to understand this situation fully, and we need to act in a logical, smart, non-emotional direction that protects our lives as much as it does our liberties. So yeah, I'm definitely going to get a lot of flack for this, and that's fine. I don't do this for a popularity contest. I don't do this to be like, this is information that I'm looking at. This is the information that I think is important. If you think I'm wrong in any way and you want to enlighten me, let me know why in the comment section below. I'm here to have a dialogue. I'm here to communicate. I'm here to learn from you, because again, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. This is why. Love you guys. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.